Well, hey there, Gen Xers. Welcome back to the GenXTalkin on Being Prepared. I'm Matt Marshall, one half.
And I'm Ed Wasson.
Oh, there he is, aka Wilksy. I'd like to remind everyone, with preparedness comes comfort, with preparedness comes peace, something we could all use a bit more of. Well, we've got a great show prepared for you today. I'm here with our co-host, and Ed, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Matt. I'm excited to talk to our guest, Bill Eckard here.
Yeah, right on. Well, today, as Ed just mentioned, we have the honor of speaking with Mr. Bill Eckard. Now, Bill is an accomplished businessman that I've had the pleasure of working with over the past, what, Bill, 2 decades?
Oh, at least.
Oh, we both work in the security industry. Bill's path has brought him into, I know, some of the most secure places on the planet in government, finance, corporate America. Today, we'll be talking with him about his current roles in the industry, but more importantly, we'll use as a bit of reflection on the September 11th attacks and how those attacks may have affected his life and maybe even as the security industry as a whole. We're excited about the discussion today. Bill, welcome to GenXTalkin.
Welcome, Bill.
Thank you.
Awesome. Hey, Bill, I just wanted to start off as we've talked about, we've sent some of the questions to you and just wanted to kind of give you some idea of what we're going to be talking about. But can you just share a little bit about your current employment right now?
Well, you kind of let the cat out of the bag that I'm in the security intelligence business. So, first off, I want to thank you and my appreciation, excited with the opportunity to participate in this podcast. What can I share when you're intelligence business? A little bit, I guess. I'm a 25-year veteran in an ever-growing industry of security and intelligence. Currently, I'm the Director of Enterprise and Federal Government Sales at Cognite Software. Cognite Software is a NASDAQ-listed public company that leads the market in security intelligence, solutions that are tailored for corporate enterprise and governments. Cognite really is like all things security intelligence. We're a market leader in security analytics software that really empowers governments and enterprises with what we call actionable intelligence. Really, the name reflects kind of our core mission, Cognite. We ignite cognitive AI and analytics to generate actionable intelligence. It's a lot of words, but really it empowers security organizations to have insights that help them connect the dots. Really, it enables them to address an ever-evolving and changing threats in the security landscape. Security is much bigger than just guards and cameras nowadays. As we've seen in world events, it's now a fusion of many data sets that help people make better decisions. Quite frankly, our customers work to provide physical security solutions to airports, retailers, likely places that you frequented. We help them be better by advancing their physical, cyber, social, even web intelligence platforms. And in this day and age, yes, social. Listening to the internet for public threats that can be used as early warning intelligence. This is a huge part of the future of security. The internet, like it as it is, it's become the bastion of both the innovators, the Elon Musks of the world, but also the bad actors, the terrorist element. Here in the US, the events of 9/11 certainly put a focus on the value of intelligence gathering and the accuracy of that. Early warning intelligence, it's actionable. And that's really key. Yeah. Getting information that's actionable really leads to the importance of heightened security. The need, not more over the necessity to have a more coordinated effort in identifying those security threats. Being able to have a timely response to mute those events as they unfold very quickly. Kind of in a 60,000 foot view, that's what I do. I provide tools that help people be safer, help governments operate more efficiently, and catch bad guys. At the end of the day, I like to catch bad guys.
Amen to that, man. Same here. Same here. Right on. We just do it in a different way, Yeah. Ed has, done the service of catching bad guys out in the field and so on. I like to do it from behind a desk. Thank you very much.
Well, I like to try to do it behind a desk as well nowadays. As they say, I'm polishing a chair with my butt instead of polishing boots. So,
there you go.
Yeah, it's a lot of tedious report writing and pouring through tons and tons of data. I'm excited to see and hear how Bill's group does that with this Cognite software.
Yeah, cool. So before we go too much into that, Bill, do you remember how we first met, or just some of our history? Because I have an impression of what that looked like. But of course, I was very, very young at the time. But go ahead.
Yeah, I have a chuckle when you say, how did we first meet? It's really kind of funny that you ask. Often what we want to do leads us to a career. Whether it's the service, whether it's working at McDonald's to become the general manager. In my industry, I'm not so different than many I meet in my travels that made the security industry a career that they never planned for it to be. Yeah. I didn't go looking for this career. I kind of ended up here. And really, it goes back to the roots of, I started with a small IT consulting company in Durango, Colorado, where either you're a lifty at the local ski area, you're pouring beers at the Durango brewery, or you're just kind of finding your own way. And I had a background in computer consulting and grew up in a family of computer scientists, software developers, where one of our companies was a startup called Laronix Information Systems, a horrible name for a company. At the time, I don't even know what it really meant. But, I would go and work with this company, and routinely they'd ask me if I wanted to change up. Go see the world, they said. Kind of like you with the military. Go see the world, they said.
Go see the world, they said.
Instead you're polishing boots or peeling potatoes. But, with that leap of faith, I said, okay. So I joined Laronix as a software engineer, where I worked in the QA department. That's a glorified way of saying I did testing and evaluation of releases before they were delivered to the field. Mm-hmm. Made sure that it worked. And Matt, if I recall correctly, you also came aboard about the same time and also joined our engineering and field services team. You went out to make sure that it worked out in the field.
That's right.
It sounds formal, but really Laronix was very small. It was a startup at the time. For me, back then I was employee number 13. I had no idea the company's growth would be so explosive over the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, really. As luck would have it, the sales guy I supported, he quit. This turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me in my entire life. I mean, a lot of things happened, aside from meeting my wife and the blessing of my children. But, for me, I had a strong understanding of our offering. And so I took that leap of faith and I moved into a sales role, an engineer that decided to be a sales guy. But it suited me as I leveraged my gift of gab. And of course, a strong engineering background. And, if I recall, the company, when you came aboard as one of our first field engineers, this dates back some 25 years now, but it was very exciting those early days. I mean, the product that no one else had and was just so new and revolutionary. I mean, industry changing, I'd say. Enterprise video management, that's what Laronix really showcased. The ability to record vast amounts of data on, at the time, small hard drives or tapes, where people were doing with VCRs. The product that we looked to try to replace were VCRs. And back then, the biggest market was the casino market space. I mean, I'm sure you've all been to Las Vegas, been in an Indian gaming casino. There's so many different varieties of casinos you see today. But the thing that makes casinos very unique is they record everything in real time. And what was revolutionary about what we did back then was we automated that by using technology. The average casino has about 3,000 cameras, and they record in real time, which means every 7 hours they would change a tape. It's 3 tape changes a day, or 8 hours. It's 3 tape changes a day. They would store that video for 7 days, just a mere 7 days. But 3,000 tapes changed 3 times a day was 9,000 tapes a day times a 7-day week were more VHS tapes than the average Blockbuster had. And they would replace them every 7 days. So, for us, it was bringing technology that undisputedly was the first. And ironically enough, many companies still today leverage the same architecture that we pioneered so many years ago.
It's funny. It's funny, Bill. I remember I actually had a business of my own. I was in business for about 2 years before I moved into Luronics.
Yeah.
I remember the ad in the newspaper, and it was this tiny little. This was back in the days of classified ads, right?
Yeah.
You Gen Xers out there, and this tiny little ad that
In
said
the Farmington Times.
yeah,
Oh my
that's
God.
right. That's right. That's right. And it said, Luronics recording need a software engineer or something like that for the Luronics recording system or something, some just so random thing. I had no idea. It just said you need networking background. And I went, okay, I'm a networking guy. I can do this. So I went up. I think I interviewed on Thursday, was offered the job on Friday. And by Monday, I was in Minneapolis with David Pardue and Scott Glidden and Chip Lau. We were all in, and oh gosh, I'm trying to remember the rest of the crew. Doug Ragland. Anyways, that whole group, all of us descended upon Minneapolis, and it was just nonstop from that point forward.
I'll tell you, at times, again, for me, they said, do you want to see the world? And I'm thinking, sure, I'm in Durango, Colorado. What else exists beyond Durango? And you mentioned it a few moments ago, Farmington, if you drove 50 miles south.
Yes.
But I remember driving to Minneapolis and getting my first taste of sushi. Yeah, for the Gen Xers that are on there. Yeah. Who would imagine that your first taste of sushi would be in the wintertime in Minneapolis?
In Minneapolis.
Yeah. But yeah, see the world, they said, and I saw Minneapolis.
And you saw Minneapolis. That's right. That's right. The other thing I remember about that time, and then I'll cut it short, is Vinny Licciardi, the star of the original viral video called The Bad Day. That guy who's slamming the keyboard against the monitor, that's Vinny Licciardi. He shows up in a rented truck with all of our equipment that we were selling to this company, and he's driving it across the country. He drove 19 hours straight, and he's like, hey guys, how's it going? Hey, I'm here. Wow. It was crazy. Lots of fun.
Before that, he was the limo driver.
That's right. He was the limo driver.
That's how small the company was.
It was a small company. It was fun times, though. Fun times. So one more question from me, and then I'll let Ed kind of talk some questions as well. But I always like to hear what people find most interesting about their job. And I know you've been in this type of role for a long, long time. What's your favorite thing about what you do?
It really kind of dovetails into how did we meet in the early days of Luronics. You know, I started my career path as an engineer. I chose that career path because that's all I knew. You know, my family, as I mentioned, owned a small retail computer sales and service organization. And my father was a software developer who had many, many companies and development contracts over the years, from writing alarm systems for Toyota, for the Celica way back in the 80s, to process control systems for cranes, for Jake's Cranes out in Las Vegas, Nevada, one of the largest crane companies in all of Las Vegas. You know, he was, and really still is, my inspiration. He's 80. Fully retired. I call it retarded, but retired down in Florida, but he's still sharp. He still keeps it busy. But I thought doing what he did was what I wanted to do. I mean, what better thing for a father than to have a son who wants to or aspire to be what he is, the example. Reality is set in, and in the end, I realized I really didn't enjoy sitting behind a computer 12 hours out of the day. Yeah. As much as I enjoyed helping customers and clients, and that's really the truth, I didn't like sitting behind a computer, but I liked helping customers. And what I really liked was allowing them to see the bigger picture of how we could help them and help them be better. And specifically in the early days, as the market was evolving, technology, you go to a trade show, and I'll talk about that a little later, but people were 5 and 6 deep surrounding our booth just to see it, because it was so revolutionary, so to be able to show them how we could address their security challenges and really bring a fresh perspective with real solutions that actually solve their problems, like the examples I gave at the casino. Not to have to pay a guy to change the tape or have a few thousand square feet just to store VHS tapes that you would replace every 7 days. Yeah. I guess I'm kind of lucky enough to have the best of two skills. sales and engineering. And what I found, this isn't something that most can do, but those that do have good success. That of course, if they can keep from talking their customers out of the sale. As I said, I've got the gift for gab, and sometimes I need to exercise my own mouth control. But leveraging my engineering background has enabled me to really bridge a gap and become kind of a trusted advisor. Many clients,
right.
independent consultants and others that I routinely engage with on technology developments and how they can best leverage those new innovations, whether I sell them, whether I work with companies that provide them, whether they've come to me as a subject matter expert. That trusted advisor role really has enabled me to articulate a vision for the ideal environment for their business and those that they protect. And, something that I've learned over the years, and certainly as we are on the eve of 9/11 here, the anniversary thereof, people are the most important IP your business has to offer. The buildings are important. The intellectual property you have and how you manufacture and design, that's important as well. But your people are the most important intellectual property you have. So for me, it's helping businesses protect what matters most. And quite frankly, and selflessly, that itself is the most satisfying at the end of the day for me. Cool. Knowing that what I do makes a difference and that people see results that are measured and they have a more successful business operation. Or they have greater success in their own career path. A person once said, no one ever got fired from buying from IBM. I'd like to think that I'm IBM some days. Some days it's not about the sale, it's about the solution and about sharing and transferring information.
Yeah.
And that's really what I like most about my job and what I find most interesting about what I do.
That is cool. And that's what makes you so successful,
Yeah, that's cool.
Ed, what questions do you have?
I've got a few questions in mind. So I was thinking, have you ever had any examples of where you provided a solution for, let's say, a Chelsea Manning scenario? You got somebody working in a secure environment, and say like when we were downrange in certain areas, they used to say, well, we don't have a SCIF, a secret compartmentalized information facility. The whole base is a SCIF. So we, as far as security, consider that all the soldiers are armed and ain't nobody getting in here. And we've got, whatever bit encryption and all that kind of stuff. Most of the computers out there were actually operating on SIPR, but there was no JWIX or anything like that at the TS level. But somehow, some way, you still run into a little bit more of the insider threat. Some guy that just somehow, some way, lackadaisically walks into this facility because he has that unfettered access. And even though they report, hey, he's plugging in a hard drive, do something about this guy, it continues to go on. And obviously, he also had targeted collection from external sources. So somebody was already guiding him, but nobody paid any attention to that. So in that Manning scenario, is there any software or solutions that you guys have or have been questioned about or queried or provided others to say, hey, somebody's plugging something in over here and they're pulling things that maybe they shouldn't be pulling?
Without a doubt, and I mentioned early on, that it's an ever evolving market space. Cognite, as I said, is in the business of voice, video, and data. And, I'll forever remember a meeting that I had with the CIO of the DoD. This was years ago, so I can speak about it now. But his biggest concern was exactly what you described, the insider threat. That is someone who comes to work each and every day, does his or her job, and then is compromised in some way, whether he's enticed, whether he owes money, whether he's got a girlfriend who talks him into it, who really is just a plant. The ability to be able to look for, network intelligence, to be able to monitor traffic and activity, and not only network intelligence with regards to traffic and activity, but also key that to behavior is something that is not only present and available today, but a technology that is evolving. And that is the fusion of different data sets. So the example that you've just shared is someone who has access to a facility, a building, a SCIF. And what is access? He has the right credentials, he has the background, the clearances, and he has the opportunity. And so that individual, now when we start to combine technologies, we start to look at rebuilding when the information is released, when the breach is identified and discovered. It's debriefing who, when, where, and how. Who did it? When did they do it? How did they do it? And where is the content now? So it's a combination of technologies. First, it's preparedness in creating a secure environment for that facility. That is badged access. That's a point in time that we know that Bill Eckard came to that building because he presented his ID badge that granted access to that building or that particular area. In addition, you now start to couple the event of access control with CCTV, and that is surveillance within the facility. Where did Bill Eckard go? Who did he interact with that already existed in the building? Is there someone that he or she may be working with? And then lastly, we start to look at combining or connecting the dots with regards to IT. And that is, what workstation did Bill Eckard log into? Was it a TWIC or a card access to the domain or to the network layer? If so, what actions were taken? And very often, some of this can be automated where we look for anomalies, and that is strange behaviors that Bill Eckard now displays. Bill Eckard routinely goes to this area of the building, but now he went to this area of the building. Why? Did he have a reason to be there? Or is the reason something that's greater than that? It may seem at the time to be nondescript and unimportant, but when we start to debrief and look at Bill Eckard's access control logs, meaning where he went and how long he was there, we can start to build a pattern of behavior. And that helps us build a profile for what an insider threat might look like and who may be an ideal candidate for that. Lastly, when we look at network intelligence, there are tools now that can monitor the traffic of Bill Eckard's workstation. Files that he downloads, files that he uploads, and more importantly, when those files are uploaded. So if we have an anomaly behavior, and that is Bill Eckard went to a strange part of the building, seemed innocuous. 2 days later, though, Bill Eckard's laptop at 12:01 in the morning started pushing lots of data out when Bill Eckard wasn't there. That is a network anomaly that can now be identified, and tools can be used to shunt it, meaning to stop that if implemented. Absolutely. These are technologies that are available today. And when you connect the dots and fuse those different data sets, that's the result that you can have. You can identify the who, what, where, when, and how.
Yeah, very good. So with all your collection platforms out there, you'll have all this information coming in through data pipelines, a variety of different data pipelines, and you'll end up having them come into collection points. You call them data warehouses or whatever, something like that. And maybe different points have different data warehouses. Does your technologies and solutions leverage an ability to cross multiple lines of business or platforms so we can collect all of that data within a reasonable amount of time?
Oh, without a doubt. So, you start to teeter-totter between what we call public information and private information and the legalities thereof. What can you monitor? What can you do? If we talk about general security and surveillance in the scenario I gave, let's take the SCIF out of the mix. Let's take just Joe Dirt's business. Joe Dirt builds things, and all of a sudden an employee quits, and now that employee starts building something very similar and creates competition. He has robbed intellectual property. Implementing standard security measures that allow us to integrate access control and CCTV to protect not only our building, but understand the activities of people is something that you can do today.
Wow.
If we go the other direction, and actually, I'll speak about this a little later, but There's also what we call PAEI, or publicly available electronic information. I like to say it, forget it, write it, regret it. My father actually taught me that. You know, if there was an internet back when I was in high school, there'd be so many pictures of things that would ensure that I would never be elected for a public office.
There you go.
But that said, there weren't photographs and pictures, and we didn't record our friends doing those things or saying those things. But the reality is that now with the internet, I mentioned earlier, it's the bastion of both innovators as well as bad actors. Mm-hmm. Bad actors, or an actor, is a hacker, is someone who's looking to gain illicit information, looking to glean information for wrongdoing or for mischief. And, you know, believe it or not, there are public information that we volunteer each and every day. And I'll talk about that a little later here in our podcast. But, you know, the ability for a business through simple Google search tools or Google Analytics to listen for posts that reference their company, their name, or their business is something that the average person can do from their own home computer. When we cross the bridge over into law enforcement, now what we're doing is we're actually doing what we call Title III intercepts. This is a court order. You are a bad guy, and we're going to go look for information on you. And the court says we can do that. Now those tools start to transcend more than just listen to your public information, but collecting that information to glean what other activities that you're doing on the internet, whom you speak to, how often you speak to them, what the context and or the words that were exchanged. And now we can start to create geofences or virtual fences, GIS-based fences, should we say, listening for posts that happen in a particular area and from a particular person that we're looking to identify and or follow. We're going to start to collect data from that individual. It's not so far from CSI Miami.
Right, exactly.
The ability to intercept phone conversations under a court order. Not only intercept phone conversations, but be able to interdict, and that is engage in that conversation or text message as a law enforcement officer to say, hey, I'm not going to meet you on the corner of 42nd Street. I'm going to meet you on the corner of 47th Street. Mm-hmm. When in fact, he started the conversation with the informant handed the conversation to you. You now completed and changed the meet. And now we go to interdict or to apprehend that individual. You know, the ability now to be able to mine data or collect information is very, very powerful. But
that's exciting.
The bad guys have the same types of access.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And that's the trouble that we have. The bad guys have as much access, and in some cases, unfettered, greater access than law enforcement, because we have this thing called the Bill of Rights in America.
They're not limited by the law, right?
Unless you're doing something bad, no one can watch you. But when you're a criminal, you can do it all.
They have insiders too.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, and their insiders don't need to be collecting information or doing direct espionage. But they could just give these guys tip-offs. So there's kind of like, I've always considered two mafias in the world, the mafias and kind of like the other mafias.
Well, that was very general, Ed. Thank you very much for that professional thing.
Ed, it really brings the enemy of my enemy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Keep your friends closer and your enemies closer.
Yeah.
And that's the truth.
Yeah.
So did you have a question? Because I got a ton of questions.
Well, hold on. I did not intend for this, Bill. I know this is what you do for a living, so I didn't intend on this making you work after hours kind of thing.
Yeah,
but I know you love this kind of stuff, so I was like, I think that's cool. You've answered some questions, and Ed, feel free to ask more. But I wanted to bring it back to one quick thing because I mentioned it early in the introduction that you have been to some of the most secure areas. You have been involved, like personally, boots on the ground, involved in some pretty phenomenal situations.
Absolutely.
One of your key areas is New York City. federal installations. So you've been in those environments on a regular basis. So I just wanted to ask first off, and maybe we can start to kind of lead into more the September 11th stuff. But do you have a favorite event, like a work project or a personal success, that you can share with our audience?
You know, I've kind of already keyed in on what really gets me going. You know, what I enjoy doing. Clearly, it's the gift of gab, but, you know, boy, I could speak to a number of personal and work-related successes that I've had or participated in over the years. From working in the design and development of the new security system at the World Trade Center. Of course, this is post-11, meaning after the tragic events of 9/11, to the retrieval of video from the New York City cruise ship terminal associated with Captain Sully and his infamous landing on the Hudson.
I want to interrupt this for just a second, because I want to get this conceptual. I think everybody, maybe some of our listeners, don't know what you're talking about. I think it's been all over the news for the past like 10 years, right? But I just want to know. Can you explain the scenario?
Let's summarize the scenario.
Yeah, so I've spoken about this at many events, corporate events. You know, as I said, the company I started with, called Laronix Information Systems, over the years through mergers and acquisitions became part of a larger public company called Verint, and now most recently in February became Cognite Software. But the common theme along the way was, although we've changed names, although we've changed logos, the solutions that we provide still remain the same. And that is physical security or digital video recording platforms for large, high-profile installations. World Trade Center being one of those high-profile installations, but also installations like the New York City cruise ship terminal. You know, you wonder, what does a cruise ship terminal need surveillance for? Well, when you have large cruise ships that are coming in and out, that are going to international destinations, ensuring the security around that cruise ship, small watercraft not being where, or ensuring that small watercraft are not where they should not be, meaning in the berth where the cruise ship is coming in, because that looks like a dot on the horizon compared to a cruise ship that's, you know, 2,000 feet long and has 3,000 passengers on it and weighs hundreds, thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of tons. About probably 10 years ago, U.S. Airbus flight 1549 had taken off from LaGuardia Airport. I have flown in and out of LaGuardia Airport so many times, morning, night. I have been in situations where I've been number 45 on the runway. That means you better get ready to pop a beer and pass out, because you'll probably still be on the plane before it actually takes off.
Yeah.
And the flight back to DC was only 31 minutes long. You'd spend an hour on the runway to fly 30 minutes to get home. But flight 1549 had taken off from LaGuardia and was headed south. And because LaGuardia is on a waterway, and it's on the eastern side of Manhattan, as it took off, a flight or a flock of geese, I believe it was geese, could have been seagulls, birds is what was reported, but a flock of birds had taken off. And when there are a lot of birds in the area, they have a sonic boom or a cannon that they ignite that's supposed to dissipate the birds, to make sure that the birds don't try to take off when the plane took off. Well, flight 1549 took off. Flight of birds intercepted, or I should say the plane intercepted the flight of birds, and it blew out an engine. As they took a turn to the west, they tried to decide if they had the ability to return back to LaGuardia. But on one engine with an Airbus, I think it was a 320, was not enough power in order to do the quick turnaround and come back and land safely at LaGuardia. So as they headed west, searching for an airport that they could land in, first was at Teterboro, which is the general aviation airport that most of the jets or the jet center, corporate jets flying out of. No, that was too far, too short of a runway, unavailable. And they didn't have enough power to climb up above the ridge of the Hudson River. So they looked to try to make it to Newark Airport, and Captain Sully immediately said, yeah, we're not going to make it, as they lost the second engine. At this point, they had something on their hands that no pilot had ever encountered, and that was commercial liner with no power that will fall like a rock from the sky, full of passengers.
Yep.
Mhm.
And fortunately, or be it as it may, they had the Hudson River, which was the longest, smoothest piece of water in the area that had no boats on it, that Captain Sully decided he would land that Airbus on. And we happen to have surveillance video covering all areas of the New York City cruise ship terminal. And so we had an excellent purview of the Airbus flying in under the George Washington Bridge,
Oh my gosh.
leveling
Jeez.
out as it came down the Hudson. I'm sure cars wondered, what is this plane up to?
Why
Oh
is
my
there
God.
a plane under me? Yeah.
Why is it? Yeah. And all the way to the landing. And,
Yeah.
you know, the
Scary.
landing was safe, ripped both the engines off of the plane.
Yeah.
And the plane continued to float for hours. I mean, most people don't realize it. Heck, we're on a podcast. An airplane is nothing more than a beer can with wings. There's not a lot between you and the outside.
Yeah.
And so very luckily, you know, Captain Sully was able to navigate the plane to a smooth landing. And, you know, that video, because of the event, became public information that news outlets, media outlets wanted. The FAA wanted, the NTSB wanted, in order to determine did Captain Sully do something wrong. And it became a security event. So
Oh, yeah.
I participated and was boots on the ground at the New York City cruise ship terminal, assisting with retrieving the video, assisting with putting the video together. Not only through that day, but as the week marched on, the retrieval of the GE, I think they were GE, they might have been Rolls Royce, but GE engines from the bottom of the Hudson.
Oh wow.
With a crane they pulled up and brought. And I want to say that plane continued to float for days, but you know, it turned into a boat. But yes, they've made movies of it. Captain Sully is the name of the movie.
Sully, yep.
But real event, and I was really there. So when I look at events that have shaped my career and things that I love to do, certainly these events, you know, not only in our country's history, I was deeply involved with, both on a professional and a personal level, as I'll share with my experiences of 9/11 specifically. But, you know, the experiences I've gained through my career, you know, from one event to another, has provided me great satisfaction in what I do. But being able to present that information to my industry peers, as I said, the gift of gab, is something I really enjoy. In my specific space, there's a industry trade show called GSX. It's more of a gathering of like minds. You know, you mentioned a few moments ago, Ed, about guys in a skiff talking about what to do. Well, those guys occasionally get let out to go to industry trade shows where they gather information about new technology. You'd think that the government was light years ahead. But, you know, they look to the private sector for a lot of that innovative technology, and then they build upon it for their own specific needs. But, you know, the GSX show, which, you know, jumps from city to city across the country, really is a place where you can see the latest technology, tools, and enables you to be more successful implementing not only business strategies, but business security objectives and goals. You know, I like to participate in focus groups, often as a guest speaker, where I can share my experiences, but also share the intel that I've gathered over the years, exposure to technologies. And I really enjoy the opportunity to share my own knowledge and experience with others. You know, one thing's for sure, and in today's environment, as I mentioned about people are your IP, protecting your everyday world is becoming more and more critical for everyone. You know, we're learning that unfold right now as we withdraw from Afghanistan and world events. You know, our need to be more prepared, our need to have a heightened awareness of our surroundings, of what we do day in, day out, as John Q. Public, as Joe Citizen, is equally as important as those guys sitting in the skiff that are gathering intel about where the next event might unfold or where the next rocket may go off. Those guys have accurate data, but now we need to look at things in a much broader, you know, environment. You'll start to be more aware of your surroundings, I think, over the next few years. Even those who are not aware will become aware because they'll need to be.
They'll have to evolve. It's everything you're bringing up is kind of interesting. The news is emerging that the Taliban acquired some of the biometric information, stuff like that. Now they've got helicopters and they're apparently, according to reports, flying the helicopters and hanging people off of them. And it's hard for me to conceive that the current president, while he was vice president under Obama for 8 years, he didn't sit in on an intel brief, some type of intel brief, and understand some of the ramifications, and maybe even have an understanding of what the withdrawal plan was going to be when it was going to occur. And we have common people on the ground that can understand some of these things don't make any sense. A lot of the stuff that you do, I think, sounds to me like it would be a serious threat to a lot of personnel in the counterintelligence business they rely on, the counterintelligence or CI and the human intelligence collection. Yeah. Some of these guys, I don't know how many you've ever met or spoken with, but as if you have met many of them, as you're probably aware, they aren't, to be honest with you, they don't have the level of that raw and even refined data gathering and sifting through and stuff like this. They're relying on fieldcraft more and operational experience. Yeah. Even if they've been through an analytical course or two, not many of them have much analytical foundation. Have you ever come across personnel that are like, nah, I don't need that information or that kind of data. We're just going to go out with my team and we're going to find it the old-fashioned way?
Well, absolutely. Regardless of where you land on the fence with regards to current politics, a commitment was made, but an execution was probably at best failed. Mm-hmm. And not because of our war fighters and those folks, but how it was organized. It goes back to, you protect your people first.
Right.
And those people are citizens. That's what the military is there for. And the military are equally an entity that we need to protect and really hold on hollow ground. But, if we look at what failed there, we left too much behind, not only in technology. I mean, they're Taliban running around like New York City taxi cab drivers now, only they're running around in 22,000 plus Humvees.
Yeah.
Yes, these are the spoils of war. Yes, we can't bring everything back home that we bring to do and execute the mission. But a failed attempt to even consider that, absolutely. It brings us to, you talk about the war fighter, you talk about boots in the street, and you talk about the old way of doing things. If we look at, it's a younger generation that is more computer centric, more focused on being able to find things via their fingers as opposed to find things by walking miles.
Yep.
But you still need people to walk miles to validate that.
That's right.
And it's a cooperative environment,
I hope so.
There are simple things that we look at that we can use to protect ourselves. And what we're talking about here is intelligence gathering in most of the broadest of terms. But there are things that happen in our everyday world that we can do to make ourselves less vulnerable. And, Cognite, we provide tools for, and this isn't a sales pitch for us. There are companies, Cognite happens to be the one I work for, but Cognite provides tools for physical security, cyber, and tools that are used for intelligence gathering. Again, it's very, very broad. And that last one, that's a big one to swallow, intelligence gathering. What is that?
That's right.
What it really means is that there are tools that can comb the internet, collecting information about topics, a person, an event. These tools can work in real time or as a collection engine. Federal entities use them as a collection engine to gain intel about what the terrorists, both foreign and or domestic, are doing to organize, what information they may be exchanging or sharing. Or a few years ago, used to identify where illicit narcotic sales may be going down. For those folks that are Gen Xers that are on the line here. You might have recalled a website called Silk Road.
Silk Road, yeah.
This was the first dark web server that was taken down. It was a $1 billion enterprise by a 23-year-old kid in an apartment in San Francisco. A web server that you could buy and sell just about anything on the planet, along with hiring a hitman.
Yeah.
And it was all done under the veil of secrecy via the dark web.
Yeah.
But these things don't have to happen in dark rooms. Believe it or not, they happen every day right in front of you.
Yeah.
And something that I really enjoy, that I think Matt follows me on Facebook. I don't use Facebook a lot simply because of the information that I like to share and not share. But, I love playing with scammers who call me on the phone.
Oh, yeah. I love it too.
I love to keep them on the phone as long as I can. And then
I've been starting to do that myself. I got 2 phones, and I started, if I get one even on my business phone, I get them at least daily. So on the other phone, I'll hit my voice recorder. I'll be like, I end up getting them to cuss me out because, I can't answer the phone in a funny way. I say, this is Mahatma Gandhi. Right away, they like, I'm going to kill your mother or something, Wait a second. I thought you wanted to sell me something or whatever, I thought you were just going to ask me about my car insurance or.
Yeah, my kicker to them is when I expose myself when they ask about my banking information. I tell them that I bank at the Jamaican National Bank, because most of them are calling out of Montego Bay, Jamaica, believe it or not, or out of India. Those are the 2 places the call centers are. But, as we often get emails, those scammer phone calls we just talked about, pretending to be from the Social Security Administration.
Yeah, I got at least 3 of those in the last week.
Yeah, or as trivial as it might seem, play Facebook games. What's a Facebook game? I like to call them scammer games. These are games that really just fish for your information. And this should mean something to each and every one of your listeners. What I'm about to share provides fair warning of the dangers playing these social media games that ask you to share. Yeah. No, they actually get you to volunteer personal details. For example, and I posted something on my LinkedIn profile about this. You can look me up on my LinkedIn profile, but my mom sends me these things all the time. And Mom, don't do that. Mom sends me a funny post with 20 questions. Each of her friends are asked to fill in the blanks.
My wife does that once in a while.
Oh my goodness. And then you count how many points you get. Like it's a game. The one with the most points wins, right?
Yeah.
Nope. The one that fills in the blanks just volunteered all of the information that a hacker or somebody like me needs to create a new account or take over yours. They'll ask things like, where did you grow up? What's your favorite color? Your pet's first name.
First name,
The street you grew up on. Your child's first name. The sports team. High school mascot. Favorite food. What's your first car? That's a popular one. Yeah. Your mom's name before she was married. Duh, that's a maiden name.
Mother's maiden name.
Shouldn't reveal that one. Your first job. Well, that leads to your credit report. Your favorite band. That may also date you as far as your age and where you saw that concert the first time to further qualify who you are. And then favorite food. When you participate in games of sharing information, you provide the world a wealth of information about yourself that you don't even realize.
They can try to dig your passwords up out of that, right?
Oh, absolutely. The personal data scammers use this to identify and target. They use this data to learn more about you, your likes, your dislikes, children you have, when you graduated, your favorite places, even where you grew up. Most people use that information detail for passwords because it's something that we can recall. We believe them to be unique. So who's going to know that? It's my information. I have that memory. But these are things that we use to create passwords for accounts. And many of the questions are also used for password resets. For instance, the number 1 or 2 questions for a password reset is, what was your first dog's or first pet's name?
Yep, exactly.
What street did you grow up on? This is common sense, people.
Exactly.
You know, so you got to be careful what you share.
But what's interesting here, Bill, is you say it's common sense. Most people have
No.
They
no
don't put
clue.
it together. Yeah,
They do
common
not
sense
put it
isn't
together.
as common,
Yeah,
and nobody will
it's not as
figure out.
common as you
Nobody
might
will
think.
figure out that my password is Metallica.
Well, hopefully the listeners to this podcast will have some sense to think and
Yes.
remove the posts you've already shared. You know,
That's right. That's right.
Going back to what I said earlier, you know, because my dad once said it: say it, forget it, write it, regret it. Make them work hard to steal your identity. Don't give them the information willingly. That's what I always like to say.
So it's interesting that you bring this up. I had actually looked at, I've got another guest as well, but I might actually ask you to come back. We have a cyber show that we're planning on doing a little bit later, either late in the year or beginning of next year. It would be actually great to have you come back on. Maybe we have a whole panel to help us out with that. So
yeah, I've got a bunch of more questions to ask that I already know the answers to, but I want to ask you anyway.
Yeah. Hey, what I would like to do is I would like to transition though into some of the kind of the secondary portion of the discussion, which is the 9/11 kind of remembrance and reflection. Now, Bill, you have talked to me just a little bit, and I seem to recall at least every few years, but regularly around this time of year, you post something that's pretty powerful. And it's around this 9/11 event. So I was hoping, I've heard some of the story, fascinating stuff. Can you share a bit about what happened on 9/11 for you?
Yeah, you know, it's been a long time, and certainly it's gotten easier over the years. You know, you said you were a serviceman. You know, 9/11 is a bit of PTSD for a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. Yeah. You know, for me, 9/11 is a day to remember and one I'll never forget quite anytime soon. You know, early in my career, as I shared, Loronics, which was the startup company, worked with the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey on their security initiatives. The Port Authority of New York, New Jersey owns all the bridges, the tunnels, the subway, the bus station, airports, and they own the World Trade Center campus, which is a 16-acre campus in Lower Manhattan. And we started to implement some new security programs across the agency, and I found myself routinely working in the World Trade Center Tower 1. And I remember like it was yesterday. Although it's impressive to go see today what they built, what was there was awe-inspiring considering how old it was and how just grandiose and massive it was. You know, as I look back, I was one of the very, very lucky ones. Back then, I traveled with an engineer, and the weeks leading up to 9/11, my engineer, Andy Kiss, who lives down in Mechanicsville, Virginia.
Yeah, I remember Andy.
Andy always aspired to be the official greeter at Walmart. He says, when I make enough money to retire, Bill, you're going to see me at Walmart greeting people. And I said, Andy, you're going to see me on the beach running Sea-Doos. That's what I want to do.
Right on, man.
But he and I traveled the World Trade Center property every week for engineering and training sessions. You know, back then I saved a lot of stuff at the time. You know, I never thought it would be important now, but as I look back, I'm happy to have a few pieces of history that I can share with others. You know, I routinely post it, not often, but my badge for Tower 1, that was my ticket to ride, my employee badge. And other piece of history was a letter I received from the chief technical officer for the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey, thanking Loronics and myself for our support during their time of need. You know, for me, these have become irreplaceable mementos that my time at the World Trade Center and our involvement with the agency in the weeks and months after the event. You know, as it was, I arrived for work in Tower 1 early Monday morning on the 10th. I was there prepping for the week's training and meetings with users and security engineers. Yeah. The Port Authority was working to deploy a new security checkpoint system. Ironic as it now sounds, because, you know, 9/11 happened because of poor security in airports. Bad actors, terrorists that got onto planes with guns, knives, box cutters, walking through security, because we didn't think of those types of threats back then. You know, but the Port Authority was already being proactive with creating a new security checkpoint system, and I had planned a full week of sessions. You know, as the day came to close, my manager called and asked that I return to DC unexpectedly. So I flew home that night. I should have been there on the 11th. But as fate would have it, I was flying to Atlanta for a trade show, Comdex, that very morning. And I couldn't catch a flight, so I ended up renting a car and driving to DC that evening. It was a really late night. And, it seemed that I was burning at both ends because I woke up late the next morning. And after clearing security, I hurried off to my gate at Dulles Airport. I was based in Reston, Virginia at the time. I did notice as I ran through the airport to catch my plane, the news and the TV and the terminal bars, and there was a fire at the World Trade Center. And at the time I thought, that's not possible. How could there be a fire in the World Trade Center?
Yeah, right.
And if it is, it's going to go out. Because if you'd ever been up to the 100th floor or anywhere in the World Trade Center, it was a big, huge steel building with lots of glass. I mean, what's to burn? At the time, nobody really knew what had happened. And I, like others, thought it was just a fire, I was on a United Airlines flight from Dulles, sitting in the emergency exit row, frequent traveler, my choice of place to be. In an aisle on the exit row, leg room, and I could get up anytime I want without someone waking me up or moving me. I think we were number 3 in the long line at the end of the runway. And ironically enough for me, that put me on the runway around 9:15. Around 9:30, it seemed as if simultaneously everybody's SkyTel pagers went off. Back then, this is when everyone had a pager as opposed to a cell phone. And companies were contacting travel employers. Later I was to learn that the World Trade Center was hit at 8:45 and another plane hit the Pentagon at 9:37. And these were planes that were gassed up and of the same size as the plane that I was sitting on. I, like a lot of other corporate employees, were traveling for business. And I remember all those pagers and cell phones going off. And Kathy Darnell, if you recall, Matt, it was our corporate travel. She called to verify if I was safe and okay and told me that I needed not travel anymore, that there was a complete ground stop.
Yeah.
I lost several good friends in the tower that morning. One was a guy named John Fisher that was an external consultant. He had 8 kids. Had no insurance because he was a calling consultant, meaning he was a 1099 employee, not a full-time employee. So he received no death benefit or even any initial acknowledgement. It's a sad story for John because he was an amazing guy. When the plane hit, he was already out of the building and he went back in to see if he could help. Many I worked with at the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey did the same. They were all cut from the same cloth. New Yorkers. Nothing can beat a New Yorker, period. Ed Bonney, he was with Lockheed Martin, one of the DoD contractors that were there I was working with. A guy named Tom Comerford, who was the program lead for the security and access control for all agency-wide. It's just what they did. They helped others.
Yeah.
Sadly, and as it is, this is something I tell in the story, As he said, I started with this small company in Durango, and several years later, I received a call from the office in Durango asking if the voicemails in my mailbox were needed, as they were updating the phone system, finally, and they'd be lost. Ironically enough, I had a voicemail from John that was left just days before, confirming my meeting on the 10th, because he was the guy I was working with.
Yeah.
Although the New York City region is where I've worked for the past 25 years, between New York and DC, it wasn't until the past few years that I could actually go back to the site. Kind of a PTSD thing for me, I'd been near it, around it, but not in it. Not in the place where the towers had once stood. It was too difficult. It was too hard. Again, kind of like PTSD for our warfighters. I mean, I get choked up and emotional even now. I've written these words, I've shared this story, but not in the format that I'm doing right now. I guess I'm just very, very, very lucky to not been there that morning or in the air. Recently, I was asked to host some colleagues from overseas to go to the World Trade Center, the 9/11 Memorial Museum. And, as I walked the hallways and gave my colleagues my version of the tour, what I recall, I found myself in a place called the Hall of Memories. If you haven't been to the 9/11 Memorial, it is absolutely moving. And it really, even in the time where we are now with politics and the withdrawal from Afghanistan and the mounting group We have now a country, not just a cell, not a handful of people from a tribe. We have a country of terrorists that have unbelievable technology. These are things we should be worried about.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But as I walk through the Hall of Memories, a place where pictures and testimonies of those lost in that fateful day are displayed, I was touched to work with so many people in New York City over the years, especially those with the Port Authority. The Port Authority owns the property and has their headquarters and command center. Well, it was located in the basement of the World Trade Center towers on 93 during the first bombing, and on the 100th floor on the day of the event. It was the epicenter for their emergency operations. They figured that a bomb could get to the basement. Why not move it upstairs? And what they did was they essentially put all their people in a place that, because of this event, became even more vulnerable. But they were just one of thousands of people that were vulnerable at that time.
Yeah.
I owe a lot to the people who've helped me along in my career. Many of them I still work with. Many have retired and passed away, but John Fisher was one of those whom wasn't so lucky that day. I've mentioned about, he went back in. So I decided on this trip to look him up. And much like I felt before, I get choked up by how the events touched my life. John was a consultant, worked closely with him the year leading up. John wasn't one of the lucky ones, but he was clearly one of the many heroes that we lost that day. And people throw the word hero around a lot, but
Yeah, right.
a guy who goes back into a burning building and is not a firefighter is an insane idiot, or someone who has a deep love for other people and wants to do good. And that's what he did. John wasn't in the building when the planes hit. He went in after to help, but he never came out.
Yeah.
Even in today's world of terrorism and that exit from Afghanistan, I try not to forget those who perished, and they're heroes who defend us today. And now, we can add the 13 heroes that were there on a humanitarian effort in Afghanistan, helping pull citizens, people who are working towards citizenship, people that helped us out, regardless of the color of the uniform or the location of the globe. I mean, to me, these are heroes. John was a hero, and the people I still work with at the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey, after 20 years plus, are still my customer and my friends. These are guys who put on the line every day. And again, it's what makes me, what I do matters.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That was always a slogan. I remember that slogan from years ago. What we do matters, in Loronics and Verint and now for you in Cognite.
Absolutely.
What we do in security matters. What we do in the military matters. What we do as firefighters and police officers matters.
Yeah.
There was I wanted to share something with you, Ed. I sent a text to you. I think yesterday. I just started watching. There's this new series from National Geographic called 9/11: One Day in America.
Yeah,
and it's on Hulu.
It is on Hulu. So it's a combination. It was a collaboration between the museum, the memorial, and the World Trade Center, and the history of it all. There's a scene. I've watched 2 episodes now. I think there's 6 total. There's a scene in the first episode where all the firefighters are in there in the North Tower. They're all in the downstairs. They're kind of mulling about. They're trying to organize themselves and figure out what they're going to do next, where they're going to go, how they're going to get up without elevators. Oh my God, we got to carry this 200 pounds of hose and everything else up 110 flights or 80 flights of stairs, right?
There's some guys that ran that Fire Marshal Buka.
My gosh. These guys are absolute heroes if you watch. And the thing that hit me the most is there's this one scene where, they start showing the outside of the building and everybody remembers the falling man, right? Pictures of the falling man and the people who just started choosing to jump from the window instead of burn to death, right? And these firefighters are sitting down in the bottom and they're hearing these sounds, thump on the ceiling, boom, And you're just going, and every single time it happens like every minute or so. Every single time it happens, they all just kind of look up, and then they started to realize it was those people landing on the ceiling. And man, I can't tell you the emotion that goes through your mind as you're sitting here and you're watching these people, these heroes, these guys who are, they're so much machismo, you know, they're like the New Yorker, and they're like, we're tough guys and all this stuff. And they're just like, they're scared shitless because they got to go run up there and save those people.
That's where you find the true courage, though, is when you are facing something that, you know, there's that much imminent threat and danger, and you go in there anyway. Yeah. And the 9/11 incident and all the intelligence failure and everything else surrounding it was a major topic and study point that was required study by our senior intelligence officers in different places that I worked. So you had to read the books like Looming Tower before it became a Hulu series and stuff like that. You had to read all these other books, and you got to get the inside life story of former FBI agent John O'Neill and Fire Marshal Bucca. Yeah, John O'Neill was in the towers with, Bill Eckard's friend, and Fire Marshal Bucca is one of those guys that ran up the stairs. He was a marathon runner, and he was in naval intelligence as well before that. Well, during the same time, and he was actually uncovering a probable plot by some people within the tower that were linked to some of those guys that might have helped facilitate Al-Qaeda into targeting the towers in the first place. And he ends up running up to try to save lives, and he perished in the collapse of the towers. Bill, what do you say to some of the younger generation now? They have all this information at their fingertips, and they can easily navigate it and find a whole bunch of stuff out, but there's still so many pitfalls and snares out there and misinformation. And there's so many people in the younger generation that maybe weren't even born until after 9/11 occurred. They're one of the friends that I had on Facebook when we were telling them about this new podcast we're going to have, and we said we're going to do this 9/11 episode. This guy hit me up and he said, are you guys going to mention the conspiracy theories, like how the towers couldn't have collapsed that way, nobody died in them, things like this? And there's those kind of people that are saying that, and there's also scam artists like that girl from Spain who actually tries to fly in here and say one of her boyfriends or ex-husband or something like that was one of the victims, and she tries to get all this attention. What kind of responses do you generate for those kind of people?
Well, look, you mentioned there's a lot of key words here that the information, the internet is full of misinformation. Mm-hmm. It's full of accurate information as well. Yeah. And unfortunately, as Forrest Gump said, you just can't fix stupid. Right. You have to be able to distill the differences. I'm a big First Amendment guy. The ability to say what you feel, do so unencumbered. That right has been given to us by the U.S. Constitution. However, that said, I think we're in a day and age of where misinformation can lead to bad decisions by large groups. Are there conspiracy theories that prove out to be true? I think there certainly are conspiracy theories that prove out to be true when it comes to election fraud and interference and things that after years and years of evaluation turn out to be probably not true, meaning Russian collusion. Again, it doesn't make a difference what side of the spectrum you are politically. These things are rooted out through extensive governmental investigations. Mm-hmm. And then there are conspiracy theories that the earth is flat. Yeah. Common sense dictates that that's probably not the case, guys. Mm-hmm. It's probably a sphere, just like the moon, just like the sun. And you got to chalk it up to science. I think we're in a day and age now where, conspiracy theories and how the internet can impact a person's decision is having widespread ramifications with the current pandemic that we're in.
Right.
Whether you believe in the vaccination or not, it's kind of difficult to swallow that the government is funding 3 pharmaceutical companies to build a vaccination so they can control us.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And who wants to control you anyway? I mean,
Yeah,
there's delusions of grandeur out here. Like, I'm little old me. I mean, if you said, I want to control, Donald Trump, I'd say, yeah, maybe somebody at that level, but who wants to control 7 billion little other ants? I don't buy it.
Mm-hmm.
And
not that important.
And for a monetary gain, I mean, they're in the business of creating pharmaceuticals. They're in the business of bringing solutions.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, for so many people, can you get sick if you have the vaccine?
Mhm.
Yeah. Are you going to die? Not likely. If you're not vaccinated, are you going to get sick? Probably. We're all going to catch it eventually, vaccinated or not. Could you die? Well, a high percentage of those that are in the hospital that are on ventilators, they didn't get vaccinated. Yeah. There's no conspiracy theory to that. And that's not me weighing in one way or the other on the vaccine. But, I think that we're in a day and age where, because of the way the internet has evolved, because of the way that social media has evolved, intelligence can be gathered, it can be disseminated, stories can be created, and thus spawn conspiracy theories that start in small chat rooms, start in groups of people with like minds, that maybe you're highly educated that lead, or maybe you're not so educated that follow.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I think we're also in a difficult time where large tech organizations also feel as though they need to police that information. Mm-hmm. And I don't believe that should be something that's their job or their business, but that's for a different podcast and a different day.
Yeah, sure.
I don't have any specific information that I could share, as to whether the events of 9/11 were part of a larger government conspiracy theory. I can tell you that a rocket didn't fly into the Pentagon. And how do I know that? Because we did the security at the guard booth for the parking lot. And the last shot that camera got was of an object that was the size of a plane moving very quickly. Yeah. It was a blurry object, but it certainly wasn't a rocket being launched by someone into the Pentagon.
Yeah, and we previously had interviewed my friend who was at the Pentagon. He was there on Ground Zero as well. So
yeah,
But these are things that shape not only our culture, but shape the way that people think today. I think you need to do your own research. I think you need to listen with eyes wide open, and make your own decisions. And part of what the theme here is be prepared.
Be prepared.
Be prepared.
You are filling our audience full of all sorts of really cool ideas. I'm just warning you, Bill.
Good
information. You may be asked to come back someday. I'm just warning you.
Let me step back on that last comment I made. Say that Chuck was at Ground Zero of the Pentagon. Correct. To clarify there, he wasn't at Ground Zero of both places or something like that. He was at the Pentagon at the crash site there. So we know we can, as the Mythbusters say, we can debunk that one.
Yeah, Mythbusters.
Yeah, that's for sure. There definitely was a plane that flew into the Pentagon. That one goes without, and it wasn't a fighter jet.
Right.
Unless this is like the movie Lost, and again, I'm dating myself, that lots of people just disappeared from a plane. Probably not.
Yeah.
That would have to play into a larger government conspiracy theory.
Yeah. Hey, the redo of Lost is called Manifest. If you want to, kind of
mission
get up to speed.
I would have to
watch that. It was crazy.
I would have to get brought up to speed because I was a dedicated follower until I too became lost, and I just said that's enough. I can't follow it any further.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, so we had just a couple more questions for you, Bill, and really appreciate all the time that you're spending with us. I know it's getting to be kind of a long and late day for you. So in what way do you feel the event of September 11th affected you in your personal life?
Wow. In what way did the events of 9/11 affect me? this is going to be something that kind of touches everybody. How did it affect your personal life? I realized that life is precious and so very short. We're not on this earth very long. I used to say that, when I was comparing things, it's like a drop in a hurricane. It's insignificant, but when you get enough drops together, it's a catastrophic event. So if we think about our time in the span of how long the earth has been here and the generations before me and the generations after me, life is just precious and so short. When I was a child, and this is something we can all relate to. When I was a child, I couldn't wait for the bell to ring at 3 p.m. It seemed like an eternity. School all day long. I hated it. As I've grown older, got married, and now with children of my own, after 9/11, I make sure that I carve out time from my work life to spend it doing what's most important.
Yep.
Spending with the ones I love and the ones that are closest to me, and being a person who works in the corporate world, just like you do, Matt, be present in the moment.
Yeah.
Because you got one shot. I mean, you think the following man, you think he knew that was the last day, or the person who made the phone call from the World Trade Center that's been published and calling to say, I don't think I'm going to make it. And then boom, the line was cut. Even most recently, the towers in Miami, the catastrophic event collapsing, the woman who was on the phone and the phone line died the minute that the tower fell or that the building fell. So be present in the moment, because you only have one shot. Whether you believe in eternal life or life thereafter, the one you have is the one that's in front of you right now. So as I've learned firsthand through my experiences in this industry, bad things happen and happen quickly.
Yeah.
And now I do kind of date myself as a Gen Xer, because my favorite movie, we've talked about movies loosely, and as Ferris Bueller once said, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
That's right.
And that's the truth. Stop and look around, because if you don't, you could miss it. So for me, it's caused me to, although I'm carving out time and I'm not a 9-to-5 guy, I've never been that way, I take the moment to pause and be in the moment for my son, for my daughter, for my wife, or for my boys, my daughter, and my wife.
I mentioned the documentary that I've been watching, and we've interviewed a number of people so far, and that is one thing that is very consistent, and that is every single one of them says family and friends. That's the thing that's important to me now. I made it through that event, and even 20 years later, they're thinking family and friends still very, very important. So
absolutely.
So one last question for me. Did the event cause any changes for you in your profession, or in what ways?
Absolutely, it has. I think not only in my profession, but the landscape of the United States. Certainly, if you watch the events in the recent weeks, we see what's happening in the world. It's still a dangerous place. And some places will always just be that dangerous. We can't fix that. Whether you see it as the final stages of a 20-year war or conflict in the Middle East, it was initiated in response to the attack September 11th. And as I sit here in my office on the eve of the anniversary, I'd like to think that, we've emerged as a stronger nation, fought by many still as a leader in the fight against terrorism. Politics aside. I realize there are conditions that we might never change, but now we need to we're more prepared. We're more aware of the dangers, and the safety and security of Americans is now, the first mission. We've improved our intelligence and the tools that we have to thwart physical and cyber attacks. It's a tough pill to swallow, as they say. As a generation that lived through this time, I think it's brought back a stronger feeling of oneness and patriotism. How did 9/11 change the face of security for me in my profession? In those early days, when someone asked what I did for a living, I said security. I had a manager that told me you need to have an elevator statement, Bill. I think, what's the elevator statement? If you're trapped with someone in an elevator and they ask what you do, this is what you say, and it's one sentence that says it all. And even most recently, I still get it wrong. My wife is a huge fan of, goodness gracious, his name escapes me now. Harry Connick Jr. And Harry Connick had a radio show or television show, short-lived, be it as it may, but in New York City.
Yeah.
And my mother-in-law and my wife and my now sister-in-law Abby all drove up to New York City, and I took them to some of my local places I like to eat, showed them a little New York City. You can see the accents coming out now that I'm telling the story.
I'm telling the story.
And they said, we need to get to the green room. And I said, don't worry, it's right up the hill. We'll get there in no time flat.
Yeah.
Well, of course I get there and we're a little late. And, as we funnel in, the person who is checking everyone in is handing through a pad. And I said, what's that? She goes, oh, that's for questions for Ask Harry. My wife looks at me with a scowl on her face. She says, if we were here early, I would have gotten a question in. And I looked at her, I said, I'm a sales guy. I'll get you the question in. I walked out in the hallway. I said, look, I said, brought my whole family up here. I said, they love Harry Connick Jr. And they're mad at me because I didn't get the question in. Can we put a question in and see if Harry likes it?
Yeah.
And sure enough, our question was selected. And,
Nice.
They had us positioned in the audience, the right place. And when the question came up and Harry looks at me and says, so what do you do? And I kind of froze on TV for a guy who's never freezing on anything. I said, oh, I work security in New York. And he turns to my wife. He says, and what do you do? She says, I work for a defense contractor in talent acquisition. And he goes, you're much more interesting. And that is on national TV now. You can Google it. You can YouTube it. My most embarrassing moment. But, I said security, and I said it reluctantly because most followed up with, what are you, security guard?
Yeah.
Not like it's a terrible profession, but to try and tell someone that I worked for an IT company that did digital video surveillance, well, that said a lot more.
Yeah.
And boy, do we have an impressive offering. The only problem was it cost as much as a Ferrari, and security had the budget of a Toyota Corolla. 9/11 though changed that for all verticals within the industry. Airports had to improve security, government entities, federal, state, local needed to improve security, from buildings to water supplies. This was all under the guise of critical infrastructure.
Yeah, critical infrastructure.
And all in response to the new threat of terrorism. So security now had a seat right next to IT when it came to budgets, and securing the facility and the people was more important than ever. This gave a boost to my business. Not only that, but it set my sail on a career path that I've now enjoyed for more than 25 years. It's changed my profession. It's changed the way the country, and these are things that the younger generation, complain about or take for granted, but things that we didn't have. We didn't have the concerns of the threat of shooter events or of terrorist events or of bombs going off.
Yep.
We didn't have to present 3 forms of ID to get into a building. And now people expect that. But I like to think that that's part of the results of 9/11 that's made us a stronger union, a stronger country. And not from the standpoint of Big Brother, but making sure that we're all more secure in our everyday activities. Yeah. So, it's changed my career path. It's changed my profession. I think it's changed the way the country looks at things. And we're only beginning to see the beginning now of what heightened security is going to look like. Absolutely. I think the next decade is going to be a telltale for so many changes.
Yeah, it's interesting. Ed's been talking about this in a couple of our past episodes, and just kind of personally when we talk, and that's what's happening in Afghanistan right now. Essentially opens the door and the line of exit for just about any terrorist activity that's needed. That is the staging location now, or could be the staging location for so many different terrorist type activities. And it's going to be an interesting next decade for sure.
We can't fathom what's going to happen. We hunted down bin Laden, who was hiding in caves. Now they have a country.
That's right.
You know,
right.
they had, and I don't want to belittle or classify, but they had camels and small arms. Now they have an army.
Yep.
We've weaponized terrorists, and
Yeah.
you know, call it the spoils of war, call it the lessons learned, but the landscape is going to change drastically, and what I do will
Yeah.
matter even more.
Absolutely. So Bill, getting close to the end here, but
Yeah.
we have something that we do at the end of each show, and it's a thing called parting shots, where we each basically just say, hey, here's something I learned. Here's kind of a last thing that I'd like to, you know, talk about or explain to the audience. So I wanted to actually, I'm going to start with Ed, and I'd like to end with you, Bill, if that's okay. Ed, what are your parting shots for today?
Well, my parting shot's going to revolve around trying to frame up at least a couple of pieces of an upcoming follow-up for and with Bill. And we've touched upon it a little bit today, but in the spirit of preparedness, I would like to invite Bill to consider fielding questions in the future framed around when we say, for example, look at those conspiracy theory chat rooms. And we should be in a time post 9/11 where we're still coming together in unity.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's that misinformation on the World Wide Web that's creating division. And a lot of that is engineered by mostly external threats like Russia or China. Yeah, I'd like a parting shot and talk about the mental and other preparedness, cyber security and other to prevent division and gain that unity by dispelling some of that misinformation, or maybe targeting some of these groups and saying, okay, well, we know these guys over here are some of the outliers, but here's some of the leading agents of some of this internal strife that we've got going on in America. It's coming from these bad actors, let's say predominantly in Russia and China. And that's what I'd like to offer as a parting shot.
For me, parting shots today, and Ed, you brought up an interesting point, and that's the potential of a cyber type of episode out in the future. And there's a lot that can be discussed around that. You know, I'm sure many of the audience have heard of not the IRA from Ireland, but the IRA. It's a big cyber hacking group out of Russia, where they basically go after people's identities. So good information that we could discuss around that. There's a couple of things around September 11th that I think are important to remember. I mentioned one of them earlier. We have this opportunity because we are still here. You know, we're not some of the unlucky ones, as we sometimes put it. We're still here, and we have an opportunity to go out, hug our family, spend time with Bill. You just got back from what looks like an absolutely fantastic vacation with your kids, which looked awesome. I would love that type of vacation, but for now, I'll just go up and hug my wife. And when my two younger adult kids get back, I'll give them a hug as well. So it's basically, for me, it's just make sure we as people who care about our family, our friends, you get a chance, give them a hug, give them a call. If you're a little more distant away from your family, let them know you care about them, you miss them, and hope to see them again sometime soon. I think that's about it for me. So Bill, I'm going to pass it over to you.
You know, parting shots, I think I've learned a little bit from Ed, what his vision is on a parting shot about what we may talk about or topics that are relevant for future shows. And I really appreciate, you know, and I think we share a kindred spirit in that thought of family and the values and the importance of family. I, not unlike many people, on a second marriage. I have a 1 1.5-year-old at home. And throughout the summer, I spend 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off with my boys. And so those 2 weeks we go to Florida and we try to do things that are fun and exciting, see the grandparents. And I shared with you in my Facebook post or actually via email some of the places that we'd gone. We'd gone out to Fort Jefferson, which is a little unknown fort 70 miles off the coast of Key West, which is just undisputedly known as the southernmost point, when in fact, this is actually the southernmost point. And it's a fort that was built in 1860, but it was a small piece of land that was acquired from the Spanish when we purchased the Straits of Florida and the state of Florida. And it's a fort that has withstood the test of times, an unbelievable monument to what people can do when they come together. It was built by the Union. It was finished by Confederate prisoners. Nonetheless, over the past 150 years, it's withstood hurricanes and disasters. It's built on a strong foundation. And so I've enjoyed, the opportunity to share my experiences with you and the GenXTalkin about preparedness. And I think that probably is for me, a parting shot. What is it that's so amazing about that fort? It stands alone in the middle of the ocean, despite the strongest of currents and waves, because it has a strong foundation. It was built with the focus of being prepared for the worst and surviving through the longest. And when I look at, what we're doing here, what you're doing here, and exchange information to help people understand what I can bring in value is, what can you do to be more prepared in your own life with your own information, so that you don't become the guy that is buying the identity insurance because it happened once before.
Yeah.
You try not to do stupid things because you're exposed to what the outcome might be. Parting shot for me is, this is a great opportunity. I've loved and enjoyed the time. Enjoyed meeting you, Ed, and Matt, always working alongside you for so many years. And
likewise,
glad that I could be a valuable entity to this. And
absolutely.
So my parting shot is, thank you for helping me share my story. Thank you for helping me share what I think is important with regards to preparedness, whether it's preparing your personal data and protecting it, or whether it's preparing for the next hurricane.
Yeah.
And what you might do there to make sure that you're a survivor on the other side.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you for joining us, Bill. And Ed, anything else?
If you see, it looks like I'm distracted. Scout's down here. He needs a lot of attention. Sorry about that. Bill, great pleasure meeting you and speaking with you today. Thank you very much, sir.
No problem. Thank you. Appreciate your honesty and appreciate your service, by the way.
Thank you, sir.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
This is Matt Marshall signing off.
I'm Ed Wasson signing off.
And I'm Bill Eckard.
Signing off. Thanks, guys.